I feel this is just a classic media plan to just take the limelight off the failed development of the car for this season, to shift the focus, to galvanise support behind their two drivers going into 2026, and to stop any noise of we're not happy with Lewis, we're not happy with the direction of the team, we're not listened. I think it's just a classic ploy, and I think that people are just reading far too much into it. Welcome back to the Shed. Welcome back to Formula One Espresso News, the podcast brought to you by Coffee Corner Motorsport. This is Full Beans, and this is where we give you all of the latest from the paddock to the podcast via what is a very chilly shed on a Sunday night. My heater's on. We're going to be talking about the FIA Commission 2026, what those proposals were this week that got voted through, what does it all mean, what's in, what's out, and what's still to be decided. We're going to be talking about the Audi R26 concept. They launched that last week. Loads of information in that one. We're going to be talking about Toto Wolff selling those Mercedes shares. What does it all mean? And then, of course, we're going to finish off with John Alkin's Ferrari comments. We can't have a podcast and not talk about what I thought those means. So you've got me for 30 minutes. One request from me, help a guy out who's cold in his shed. Hit that like, follow, subscribe button. I will be eternally grateful. And of course, it will help boost the ratings of the podcast and get this to even more people. So if all of that takes your fancy, grab your coffee, sit down, strap in, and let's give us some full beans. Okay, welcome back. It's been a while. Kicking off with the FIA Commission for 2026 and the rulebook. There were some changes. There were lots of things being talked about. Some things are going through. Some things are just sat on the fence. And this is what we know so far. So with regards to a mandatory two-stop, this is not in, I repeat, it's not in for 2026 as of present. It is staying in Monaco. That rule we saw introduced for Monaco is staying for 2026. However, with regards to sweeping the whole season with it, there are still too many people undecided. And at the moment, it's been shelved. Talks are still ongoing between all the parties involved. So the Formula One teams, Pirelli, and of course the FIA. However, the teams are a bit reluctant to use it. There's been a lot of talk about how people don't think it's going to create more strategy. They think it's just going to cover your opponent off. And of course, we've got to talk about tyres in amongst this. And Pirelli are getting a bit of a hard time going with these. Now, what you've got to remember is the tyres have been developed with the teams, with Formula One, with the FIA. The teams and all of these people involved asked for these tyres to not be as hard wearing as what they were. So they wanted more grip on them. They wanted more tread on them. They wanted them to go longer. And unfortunately, Pirelli have delivered that brief. But what it's done is, to be brutally honest, it's made for pretty crap racing. And Pirelli are the ones, getting the brunt of this, when in fact all they've done is follow the brief they were given. Now, for me, I still want to see tyres that wear. We've talked about this on the podcast so many times. I don't want to see exploding tyres. I don't want to see problems with these where drivers are put at risk. But I do want to see an offsetting strategy. One of the things that come out of Brazil was the fact that the teams, for the first time in such a long time, were able to offset their strategy. They were able to try different things, two stops, one stop, all these sorts of things the teams were trying. And suddenly we got a race, suddenly we got excitement. Is it any surprise that when we had a mixture of strategy, we had one of arguably the best races of the season? Because we had that. We had people on old tyres being hunted down on new tyres. We had all of these factors being played into. That's what we want to see as fans. That's what Pirelli need to go back to. And I don't know how they do it, but they need to go back to it pretty quick, because ultimately what we've currently got on a normal race weekend is pretty damn rubbish. But with regards to tyres, as I said, the two-stop from Monaco is still technically there. It's in the rulebook. They can invoke it if they want. They haven't said if they're going to or not, but it is an option for them. And then one thing I will say is, how many times have we seen the FIA try to artificially inject excitement into Formula One and it's gone wrong? We've seen that Pirelli have tried this, changes in compounds. We've tried all these things where they've tried to introduce them a bit different, and ultimately it hasn't worked all season. So for me, I'm glad it's not in as a rule. It doesn't need to be in as a rule. We need tyres that wear, we need tyres that invoke a different strategy, and we need to find a way to do that without invoking a mandatory two-stop pit stop, which will tell everyone else what you're doing. Could you imagine a race now? Lando's in the lead, he's made one stop. Therefore, he's going to make another stop because he's got to, because the rules say that he's got to. Doesn't matter what his tyres are doing, he's got to. Absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. In terms of the wind tunnel times, they're being changed. Now, what the commission didn't tell us is what the proposal is. all we're hearing is the wind tunnel runs and that sliding scale is going to be changed over with regards to obviously Cadillac coming on board and the fact they haven't been updated for years. Now, this has been quite a successful feature of the regulations when they come in around the cost cap time. As in, if you're more successful, you get less wind tunnel time. If you're not as successful, you get more wind tunnel time. That basic is in there. The teams are quite happy with that. What they're going to do now is just go back and slightly tweak that. Like I say, it's not been updated for a number of years. We've now got an 11th team coming in. So now is a good time to review it. But like I said, the commission didn't go into any details about what that's going to look like going forward and what it's going to mean for the teams involved. So it's quite hard to say if there's any winners, losers, if it's going to be a big change or not, just so we know something's coming with it. But the whole principle of this sliding scale isn't going to change. It's still going to be the same sort of system. It's just going to be updated. So there's nothing really there to worry about, or nothing there which I feel is going to impact too much on the teams. I can't see it being a highly dramatic change. He says that now. Right, driver numbers. So drivers can get a number change. So this is something that some of the drivers have requested. We've heard this in the past. Obviously, at the moment, you stay with your number all the way through your Formula One career. You can only have you can only choose a number that hasn't been used for a couple of years once it's gone out of Formula One, etc., etc. A lot of the drivers have said that when they come into Formula One, they would have preferred a different number. Some have, expressed are willing to change their number, but obviously they can't because of the rules. The FIA are looking to relax this rule. They said that pretty much it's going to be brought into effect, so a driver will be able to change their driver number if they so wish to do so. Now, with this one, I'm not overly bothered about this, to be honest. Driver numbers, as I was growing up, were done by the team and where they finish in the constructor order. So I'm used to teams and drivers change their numbers, have been before. I suppose I got used to the new system. I don't know how many drivers will change it. A lot of drivers now, we saw Charles Leclerc launch his range. They've got their numbers, kind of entwined with their brands. They got their numbers sort of, mixed in with their logos, all these sorts of things. So I don't know in the modern Formula One world how many of the established Formula One drivers will want to change that number they've got. I feel it's more of a driver coming up might do that, as in one coming into Formula One who may want to change into it, or maybe there's a driver number that becomes available that someone's had their heart set on and were never able to get it, that might be in amongst it. But for me personally, I'm not too sure how many of the established drivers in Formula One with their logos and with their numbers entwined in things are going to be wanting to change that number, and if it's going to be that popular in terms of change it. I'm not entirely sure on it, but they're going to have the option now. And like I say, it's not really something which I've got a big sort of opinion about. If they want to change it, let them change it, to be perfectly honest. Liveries. Now, one of the big issues we're hearing about liveries is, of course, the weight of the cars once again for 2026. We all know this happened a couple of years ago. We all saw the bare carbon that appeared on the cars in the hope of saving those few precious sort of pounds that are on the cars by not painting your livery. The FIA don't want to see that happen. The sponsors don't want to see that happen. They pay a lot of money to have their logo and their artwork on a car, and they don't particularly want to see it on a bit of bare carbon. So the FIA have now said that from 2026, 55% of the car must be covered with a painted livery. So you can only have 45% bare carbon fibre, is what they're saying, over the whole of the car. They're hoping that this will stop teams just going and stripping it back, and also that will appeal to sponsors who obviously pay a lot of money to have their names on the car. I think it's a good thing. I'm not a fan of bare carbon, if I'm honest. I prefer a livery that's eye-catching. I prefer a livery which stands out, and also I think if you're watching it either from a track or on TV, being able to distinguish your team's livery is something which is really important to do so. My only request is, can we not have so many one-off liveries, because they don't seem to be one-off anymore, do they? Some of the teams are pretty much change their liveries every few weeks to go with sponsors, and that feels like it's too much. The whole point of a livery is it's your brand, it's your personality, it's your team, and I feel we've got too many one-offs happening now. We seem to have about, I'd say on average, about 5 or 6 in a season at certain races. So for me, I think that maybe the one-off livery should be kind of capped if we're going to do anything about it. But it's something which, like I say, it was coming because the sponsors don't want bare carbon fibre, and of course the FIA don't want every car to look the same either. They got a lot of criticism for that one, and they've been asked to do something about it, and this is their answer to it. So 55% of the livery must be covered by a paint job. And then we've also got the driver cooling system under review. They're talking about possible weight allowances. this has been a bit controversial with the drivers. Some drivers like it, some drivers don't. We saw that famous clip with Kimi Antonelli saying that can he say that the vest failed because it was giving him warm cooling. That's something that Max Verstappen kind of alluded to. I feel that if we're going to introduce driver cooling systems, it should be up to the driver. It should be a personal thing. I get the safety element. But to be fair, we've raced without these. And actually, with the exception of Qatar a couple of years ago, which have already had massive inroads into making that better because of the fact of the change of the year when it's going there, etc., etc. I think that we made great strides in this. I think that this should be a firmly in the driver camp, as in if you're a driver and you want to use that driver cooling aid, you can do so. If not, you get the ballast to make it up to the same weight, so there's no unfair advantage. But actually, I think that's a pretty fair sort of option for this one. So I'm hoping that's what this is, because I don't want to see, cooling vests implemented on everyone. Ultimately, if you're driving a Formula 1 car, you got to be comfortable. Some drivers just aren't comfortable being restricted by these vests on top of everything else they're already wearing. So I think it should be a driver choice. I think that it firmly needs to stay with them. I agree that there needs to be a balanced allowance if you've got a driver who's wearing one and one who hasn't. I totally agree with that one. But likewise, I don't think it should be mandatory for all drivers. I think it should be that the driver gets to choose what option they choose, either take the ballast or take a particular driver cooler aid. It should be a personal choice for me. But with regards to that, they said they're going to keep in discussions with obviously the Drivers Association, and no change can be made on that one without them knowing. All of these changes are going through to the December World Motorsport Council vote in terms of the ones that are being proposed. Obviously, the ones like the tyres that aren't confirmed aren't going to go through, but like the wind tunnel regulation changes, the driver number changes, the options for the driver cooling, all those are going to go for the vote and basically get ratified. So yeah, I'll keep you updated with those as, of course, they go through. Probably just after the season, if I remember rightly. I think the World Motorsport Council meeting follows the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So I'll keep you updated as soon as they go in there. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of those. Are you glad that we're going to get painted liveries? Is it something that really doesn't bother you? What about driver numbers? Which driver do you think is going to change? Do you think there's a driver on the grid who actually wants to change their number? Or is it just a case of, do you know what, it's one of those things which kind of is going to come in and not really make a difference? Right. Quick sip of the coffee, and we're going to be talking about Audi R26 concept. So Audi did a big reveal last week. It gave us a lot more than what we thought. And the original thing was kind of like a livery launch. And then what I got sent afterwards was like a 25-page document from Audi Motorsport on everything they've done, including like schematics on the engines and everything. It was great to read. But yeah, so basically they've talked about what their whole concept is. Now, this is, as we know, it has been going on for a number of years. They obviously talk over the Sauber. They've been increasing their shareholding to the point where they've got complete ownership. And of course, they're developing their own power unit. So they are a truly new sort of manufacturer in Formula 1 for 2026. Now, they've got their 3 hubs that they talked about. So you've got the one in Germany, which makes a power unit. You've obviously got the existing Sauber one in Switzerland. And of course, you've got their Bicester hub that opened this year in Motorsport Valley, which is to recruit the top talent that's in that area. So Sauber, with the exception now of Ferrari, who are the only ones who haven't got a hub in the UK, have now got a hub in the UK, which basically lets them, get into that Motorsport Valley concept of the designers are based in that area, and they would be more inclined to work for you if you're there than rather than moving themselves to Switzerland. And they've done something very similar to what AlphaTauri did at the time, obviously now Visa Cash Out Racing Bulls, where they opened one in Bicester before they relocated to Milton Keynes, like they've done now, to obviously share facilities with Red Bull, which is a cost cap saving. But they opened a design facility in the UK so they could tap into that talent that's in that area without having to relocate families or anything like that. Audi have seen that that's really a good way to go forward. They've taken that on board and they've opened up. We obviously know that Cadillac are based in Silverstone, so they've got that. So like I say, as it stands currently, Ferrari, the actually only people who haven't got a satellite office of some sort in the UK currently. Someone was saying that might be a hindrance, and I'll let you make your own mind up on that one. I personally think that every team's doing it for a reason, and maybe that Ferrari need to look at. I always say, we went to Maranello just last week. We saw the Ferrari factory in its glory, and both the road car and the Formula 1 sort of concept. And for me, I get why they want to keep it Maranello. I get the passion. I get why they want it all there. But I also feel they're kind of missing a trick, because I feel that Ferrari is Ferrari, and if you built a satellite sort of link in the UK and staffed it with people from Maranello coming across, and then combine that with people in the UK who would be willing to work for it, I think you get the best of both worlds. So I do think that Ferrari are missing the trick there on a personal basis, but I get why they haven't currently. And with regards to Audi, going back to them, they introduced their colour identity, which was that titanium, that carbon black, that sort of Audi red that they've introduced, with obviously the four rings being red on the Formula One project. I don't know if that's the finished livery. They haven't made it very clear. It looks kind of half done. It looks like it's there at the front, and then someone's got a set square to it. It doesn't look that good, if I'm honest, in terms of a livery. So I'm kind of hoping that that was just done to introduce us to the colour scheme. That's not their actual finished livery, but it remains to be seen. Some people are saying it is. I honestly don't know. Obviously, the leadership's pretty settled. They've got Binotto, they've got Jonathan Wheatley in there. They seem to have made some great strides forward in terms of just how they are with the car. They've obviously got Nico Hülkenberg, they've got Gabriel Bortoleto. Both drivers have improved as the car's improved. I think that Sauber, taking over an existing team has been a really good move for Audi. They've been able to take settled people and bring them on board, improve the facilities, do stuff with them. By coming in early, they circumnavigated some of the cost cap issues. So, I think that it's great for the sport to have Audi on board. I don't know about the engine. I don't know what it's going to do. It's been designed with them in mind. They were one of the people who wanted this more electrification alongside Ford. So they are two people who you'd expect have the technology and the expertise to make a really good go at this. In terms of engines, I've seen the schematics. They've put it on the dyno. Obviously, they're running it. And they talked about that they want to fight by titles by 2030. I used a phrase in my article where I said it's probably the most serious new Formula One entry since Mercedes' return. And what I meant by that is, yes, of course, we saw Aston Martin come in when they took over Force India. But for me, this is a power unit coming in. This is when the big engine manufacturers coming in. That's what I meant when I compared it to that on the article. It's huge for the sport to have Audi in Formula One. And anyone who's watched them in any of the series will know that they come to win. They don't come to just participate. They've heavily been involved in reshaping these regulations in terms of the engine side of it. So for them, they're going to want to hit the ground running. That's why they've gone with stability. They've recruited outside that. They did have some issues. Yeah, they made a lot of changes to get it right, but it seems like Binotto is on the right path. And it seems like Jonathan Wheatley is the right person taking forward as well. So I'm really excited to see what they're coming on. In terms of other teams coming into Formula One, we've obviously got Cadillac. Now, Cadillac last week did a test in Imola with an SF23. They borrowed from Ferrari. And so Ferrari gave up a test in a previous car a couple of days for them. No doubt in exchange for a payment, I'm sure. But the idea behind it was to get Sergio Perez some time back on the track because, of course, he hasn't had much time on the track. Now, Valtteri Bottas only took part in a seat fitting. He didn't take part in the actual test because, of course, he's still in the contract for Mercedes. And Cadillac's answer is he's driving previous cars and doing like Pirelli tyre tests with Mercedes. So actually, they didn't really need Valtteri in a car. That car isn't going to give him any performance sort of knowledge for 2026 at all. It's purely to get the team and the crew used to doing Formula One work. It's purely designed to get them used to Ferrari's way of doing things because obviously Ferrari are going to be Cadillac's engine supplier. And of course, it was done to allow Sergio Perez a couple of days in a Formula One car again after the last time he had an outing was pretty much Red Bull. So yeah, that's just what happened with that one. Like I say, nothing really to report. It's just then getting used to things, Ferrari getting used to showing Cadillac about the engine, about what they do, about how they set it up. Because even though the 2026 engine is going to be new, a lot of the processes around Formula One engines, how they look after them, what that integration with some people from Ferrari who would of course be integrated with Cadillac as being their engine supplier, what that means, what it looks like. And of course, from Cadillac's point of view, it's an opportunity to get some staff actually at a track and doing a test, which is always good. So yeah, Cadillac, I feel, are going to be the dark horses. I had a discussion with someone about this one just this week. And the reason I think this is a lot of focus has rightly been on them coming into Formula One. I think Audi tried to steal some of that back this week with that big launch. It was a very lavish launch in Munich. It talks a lot about the project. It kind of felt like they're restamping their authorities. If, say, remember us, we're new in Formula One as well. But for me, I think Cadillac are a real dark horse because from a cost cap point of view, if you think your cost cap's $160 million or whatever it currently sat at, they haven't had to develop a 2025 car. They've been able to put much more into 2026 car. I know they would have had to buy equipment, and I know there would be lots of overheads, but even their staffing has been low and then ramped up recently. So all of this stuff, which goes out of your cost cap that Cadillac haven't had to pay for, they've been able to spend extra on the development of the 2026 car. That gives you a really big leg up. That gives you a really big sort of position where you may be able to get an advantage from that one. So I think for me that Cadillac is probably, for me, the big outsider for next year. I think Audi would do well if they can get their engine right, because I think the Sauber concept is moving forward. I think the Wheatley and Bonotto and engines is something which is, I said before that Ferrari, really lost a massive player when they let Bonotto go. I know as a team principal, he may not have been as successful, but in terms of his engine knowledge and that side of things, Audi did a right coup by getting him. So I think Audi I want to look forward to, but my dark horses, if you excuse the pun, is Cadillac, just because of when I sat and looked at the cost cap thinking, hold on a sec, if you've had that sort of money and you haven't had to pay what the other teams have had to pay in terms of staff, in terms of equipment, in terms of transport, in terms of developing a 2025 car, you could put all that into 2026 car. You've not had to split your wind tunnel time. You've not had to do anything for the last number of years. You've been purely focused on 2026. That's a massive advantage. And I'll just leave you that one. Right, so what's next? Let's have some more coffee. I'm going quick because I'm absolutely freezing in the shed, by the way. So, Toto Wolff. Now, before we talk about Toto Wolff and what those share and that sale actually means, here's a quick word from the sponsors of Coffee Corner Motorsport. Right, welcome back. Hopefully that bit of break allowed you to make another cup of coffee. And we're getting on to Mercedes. Now, Mercedes shares. So we heard the news last week that Toto is exploring the option of selling 5% of his shares. Now, for those who don't know, the Mercedes share scheme is quite simple. It's made up of three partners, each with about 33.33 whatever percent. Basically, you got Ineos, you've got Daimler, who are of course the Mercedes board, and then you've got Toto Wolff himself. Now, this 5% is coming out of Toto's 33%. That's important to remember. It's not coming from the other two. They will retain 33%. So technically, they will be more of a partner than what Toto will be in that sense. The biggest things from this, they reckon that now values the team at over $6 billion. Let that sink in for a minute, because we saw that obviously McLaren were like 3.5 billion. This is now valuing Mercedes at 6 billion. It's going to net Toto Wolff about 200 million plus, they reckon. This is purely a liquidity move. This is basically Toto just cashing in on some of his share option. It's not a move that sees him relinquish any control. Any deal doesn't change the ownership, doesn't change the governance. Mercedes has been quick to sort of stamp that one out. What this means is that Toto will get a boatload of cash, carry on as normal. He's still the CEO. He's still the team principal. He's got a contract in place for that one. That takes him through to the end of 2026, I believe. That won't move at all. And it just shows you how big Formula One's got. Now, the reason Toto's doing this, he's probably trying to free up a bit of cash. He wants some cash in the bank. Obviously, he might have some other projects on the go. It makes sense to do that. And also, Formula One's at its high. There's a chain of thought to how high can Formula One go? How much further before the bubble bursts? This to me feels like it might just be Toto cashing out. If you think that 200 million is probably the money he put in when he first come to Formula One, and some more, so he's probably just recuperating what he put in originally. Yes, he's worth a lot more money than that, but at the moment it's been tied up in the share option. So it looks like it's going to go to CrowdStrike, who are of course one of the sponsors of Mercedes. That's what we're hearing. That's what the likely buyers are going to be. Like I said, it doesn't change the way Mercedes run. It's nothing to worry about if you're a Mercedes fan. It's purely just freeing up some cash. It's totally just cashing in at the hype. And of course, it allows for what happens in 2026. If their decline carries on, you'd expect shares to be worth less, and therefore Toto's then cashed out at the high end. Obviously, if they're successful, Toto's still got 28% or whatever it is of his shares, and he'd recuperate that back very quickly in terms of monetary value if Mercedes happen to win championships again. So, like I say, it doesn't change anything about the team. Nothing to worry about if you're a Mercedes fan. Just goes to show you how big Formula One has actually been, with Toto selling shares with a team now valued at $6 billion it's staggering. I mean, the cost cap's done that, of course. Drive to Survive, cost cap. All of these things just made Formula One so much more valuable. Formula One's profits obviously get shared between the teams. So the more money Formula One makes, the more money the teams make. We know they're making more off commercial deals than what they even make off prize money now. It's quite staggering, some of the money that we hear. They've obviously got long-term partners in Petronas. I'm not too sure when that deal runs out, but it's been a long time running now. And they've got many sponsorship deals going on. We saw that Ineos stepped away as a main title sponsor this year. That was to do with Sir Jim Radcliffe and money problems after he put a load of money into Manchester United. I thought the shares might have come from him, if I'm honest. I thought that he might have been the one to sell, not Toto. But yeah, there you have it. So Toto's 5% hasn't gone through yet. It's just being explored. It's just an option at the moment. But if it does go through, it means absolutely nothing in terms of how Mercedes have run or anything to do with a changeover at Mercedes. It's purely just Toto putting some money in the bank, so to speak. Right. Now, originally, I was going to talk about Las Vegas, but I'm going to talk about Ferrari, and I'm going to talk about, obviously, John Elkins' remarks last week, because I haven't done any videos on this currently, so I just wanted to give my sort of thoughts on this one. And like I say, I've been to Maranello just last week. I have no insider knowledge to this. We went on a factory tour with the Silverstone Ferrari Club, so there's no press on this. There's no sort of in the knowledge on this one. These are just purely my own thoughts. Obviously, they won the Endurance Championship, and then he came out and made his comments. Now, on paper, he's taken a lot of flack, and rightly so. To say that the team's made strides forward, they have in areas, don't get me wrong, the things he talked about in terms of pit stops, those side of things, absolutely. However, and this is a big however, he singled out, obviously, Lewis and Charles for talking too much and not delivering on track. The thing for me is, when you look at it logically, we all know that Ferrari haven't built a title-winning car. That's not disrespectful to Ferrari in any way. That's just a realistic point of view. Ferrari have not got a world-class championship-winning car in that garage at the moment. You can see that from the drivers. Now, yes, Charles has outperformed Lewis. I'm the first to admit that one. Lewis has struggled with adapting to Ferrari life. We're hearing all sorts of rumblings. That always happens with Lewis. Some of it may be true. Some of it may be complete and utter rubbish. Who knows? It's the world of Formula One. People like to gossip, especially when it's about Ferrari and especially when it's about Lewis Hamilton. What I will say is Charles hasn't fared overly better in the sense of he's not been a title contender for pretty much all this season. So it's not as if Lewis has performed against a teammate who's been a title contender and they've had a car to win championships. They haven't. And that's my point. What do I think of this? I feel it could be a bit of a double bluff. What I mean by this is I wonder if the drivers knew this was coming. They were very quick to react on social media. They don't strike me as a team that does anything without a plan. They certainly don't do anything media without a plan. If you think back to Ferrari's strategy, it's not Ferrari's strategy to just drop something like this with no sort of prior knowledge. It's not the way they do things at all. And for me, it kind of feels like it might be premeditated. And what I mean by that is I wonder if John Elkin is using drivers to take the pressure off the team, and that the drivers are aware of this, they're happy with it, they don't mind playing this game, they're seeing the bigger picture. And is this a classic Ferrari tactic of moving the limelight away? John Elkin is now rightly taking the flak for his comments, and everyone is, Elkin out, and you're seeing it all over social media. Even when I posted I was going, the amount of comments I had from people saying that if I saw him, telling what I thought. Could this just be a ploy to take the pressure off Ferrari and the team not delivering? Could this just be a good old-fashioned media tactic to say, do you know what, if I say this, they're going to come after me? The drivers, suddenly people are united behind the drivers. Suddenly the people are united behind Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Suddenly all that talk we heard of, not following Lewis's direction, not listening to what he's saying, is kind of subsided to this overwhelming sort of condemnation of those comments. And could this actually have been John Elkin's play all along? Could this be Ferrari's play all along to just say, do you know what? If I take the flak for this, I could take it. I'm the chairman. I don't mind. I could be the bad guy in this. Good cop, bad cop. The drivers come out of this smelling roses because suddenly there's a whole world united behind them in condemning me and my comments. And then the pressure is coming on with the teams. The team are free to carry on with their development without sort of facing the music of they built a rubbish car for 2025, because they have. We've got 3 races left. They're not even guaranteed to get second at the moment. Mercedes overtook them, Red Bull are in there with basically one driver scoring points. And could this just be a classic media one? It kind of feels like it to me. We don't make sweeping statements. They don't make off-the-cuff remarks. Everything Ferrari does has a plan. And that's what I feel this one is. I feel that we're reading too much into this. I feel this is just a classic media plan to just take the limelight off the failed development of the car for this season, to shift the focus, to galvanise support behind their two drivers going into 2026, and to stop any noise of we're not happy with Lewis, we're not happy with the direction of the team, we're not listening to Lewis. I think it's just a classic ploy, and I think that people are just reading far too much into it. And like I said, I don't remember a time when Ferrari made an off-the-cuff comment. Everything Ferrari does is done with strategy, with a goal in mind. And for me, it feels like this was the goal all along. Take the pressure off, put the pressure on John Aitken, who can actually manage that pressure, can actually live with that pressure. It doesn't bother him. And then, of course, you've got people galvanised behind the drivers because you're actually condemning what he said. It's a perfect ploy. And if you look up and down social media, I'll say it's one that's worked to absolute perfection, if that's what it was intended to do. So let me know your thoughts on that one. That's just my take on it. I don't think that John Aitken thinks that at all. I think he's just taking one for the team, as the phrase goes. But intrigued to know, based on that, if you agree, disagree, or was it just pure frustration now at someone who's watched his endurance champions win again and seeing his Formula One team DNF in Brazil with a double DNF and pure frustration? Could, of course, just been that, and I could be wrong. But intrigued to know your thoughts on that one. And that is pretty much it. That's all I've got for you this week. Yeah, like I say, it's been a busy couple of weeks. Apologies for lack of podcast. The website's doing extremely well, so a massive thank you to everyone who's been supporting the website. I know I've said this so many times before, but I genuinely appreciate it. It's going really well. In terms of myself, I did a Red Bull factory tour a couple of weeks back with Castor. Just been able to post about that one. We had to keep that one quiet until Red Bull agreed all the content with that one. That was amazing. Got to see literally a whole factory tour, how they built the car, everything from start to finish. Went to the heritage part, saw some of the RB7s being tuned, ready for a show run. That was absolutely amazing. And like I said, just this weekend, we literally did 24 hours in Maranello. So we did a Ferrari tour, then we did a Ferrari museum tour, and then we had lunch also in Maranello as well. An evening meal, I should say, in Maranello, which was pretty amazing. Took Dad with me for that one. Couldn't take him to Red Bull, which he was gutted about, but certainly managed to take him to Maranello. And of course, the next week we fly to Qatar for Dad's 70th birthday. So we've kind of had a summer where we haven't done a lot, and we've kind of crammed it in all to the end of the season. So yeah, massive thank you for all of the support I've had. I've tried to get better at things. It's genuinely, it's hard work, and I'm not going to lie, I know I've said that many times, it's really tough trying to juggle everything. I've said this so many times, it's just me doing things. And when I started this season, I had all these hopes of like a weekly news podcast, and I've had all of these things where I wanted to do so much more. The website took a lot longer. It obviously took a complete redevelopment. Weekly podcasts, to just produce a 30-minute podcast takes a number of hours to film it, edit it, and do those things. And if I'm honest, I haven't got enough hours in the day. I'll try to fit all this stuff in, but ultimately the care of the kids always has done and always will come first. So I don't apologise for that part of it, but I do apologise for not being able to teach weekly podcasts. So I appreciate the people who have already subscribed and who support the podcast. I genuinely mean it. And looking forward to 2026. I'm looking forward to some things. We're at the end of the season now. It's been a long season. I said that on the last podcast. For me, there's been lots and lots of changes, lots of sort of moves into where Coffee Corner Motorsport is going for 2026. I'm quite happy with the direction. I'm quite happy with what I've got in place now, in terms of workflows, in terms of the website, in terms of how many videos I do. So you probably noticed a decline in videos because I just don't see the point in making a video for the sake of making a video. I feel that everything I bring should add value to people if you're a Formula One fan. So that's one of the reasons behind it. That's allowed me to get time back to do stuff. And I think it's a good move. But yeah, I appreciate the people who have sort of stuck with me whilst I've been adapting, making changes. That's the way of the world. Coffee Corner is almost unrecognisable from what it was when it started in this shed a few years ago now. But I'm glad what it's done is it's become a media brand. It's become something which for me is just phenomenal in terms of the growth of it. So that's all down to people listening to this podcast, reading the articles, liking the videos, interacting, and generally as we come towards the end of this season, a massive thank you from me. Hope you've enjoyed the content so far, and 2026 is going to be interesting, isn't it? So let me know your thoughts on this one. A massive thank you, and thank you once again for listening. You've been listening to Coffee Corner Motorsport. This is, of course, Formula One Espresso News, bringing you all the latest from the paddock to the podcast via Well, it's a cold shed. I'm going to go and get warm. Catch you later.